What's up guys, Alberto Big Boost here. Today we're gonna be working on the 2JC. So I picked up the head from the machine shop. We have this big old head right here. We're gonna be installing the cylinder head onto the block today, and then I gotta see what else can I install at this moment. But another thing we have to do is to measure the valve lash, because I had a valve job done on this head to reseat all the valves, clean them out, take all the carbon off, make sure I have perfectly good sealing valves. So that changes the valve lash. Since the valve goes in deeper into the head, it reduces the spacing between the valve and the cam. So that means the lifter has to be a lot thinner unless you trim the valve and adjust then. But in this case we don't want to do that, so I might end up getting some aftermarket cam followers for this. Let's go ahead and unwrap this beautiful machined head, all cleaned up. One of the most crucial parts when building a motor is to have lots and lots of cleanliness. So you need to be absolutely clean. Every part can't have any debris or nothing. So first thing you do when you get your head back in the machine shop, inspect for debris, blow it out with the air. So you have a new air shock available. Just like push it all out, every hole, wherever. Try to use some brake cleaner, get everything out, and then inspect everything. Then you're good to install it on the block. So this is what my 2J head looks like after being cleaned, decked. It has a valve job on it, and it also got hot tank to clean out any grease that it had on it. Then on the flip side, you can see the Brian Crower retainers. These are titanium retainers with dual valve springs. Also in there you can see the valve keeper looks a little bit darker than the stock one. These are the Brian Crower billet valve keepers to keep all your valves running together at high RPM. For the cam profile that I'm going to be running, which is 272, I do not need to clearance this area for the lifters because it doesn't have a high enough lift for that. But there are some cams that you have to trim this part right here to allow the lobe to clear. But in this case, with the BC stage 1 and 2, at least you're not required to do that. I store the bag. I make sure to put at least 2 layers of bags over the block when storing it. That way there's no debris getting into the inside of the motor. So now we're gonna unwrap this. And this is what it looks like underneath the covers. The block has also been very finely decked to run a MLS head gasket. So on these blocks, pretty much you have to run the super smooth decking because the factory head gasket is also metal. We're basically ready to install the head, except we don't have dowel pins. Good thing about a new set front drift motion, sweet. These are very easy to install. You just pretty much put them like this and tap them into place and done. A very must-have when running any sort of high-performance engine is to put ARP studs. I'm going to be using ARP 2000s on mine. These are more than enough for the horsepower that I want. Then for head gasket, I'm going to be running the Brian Crower BC 8230 Toyota head gasket. Aha. A very nice multi-layer head gasket. I like that it even has the BC logo on the corner. This one is a 5-layer steel head gasket. Now double check, triple check, make sure everything is clean, and we're ready to drop the head gasket. Now very carefully, we install the head onto the block using the dowel pins as guide pins, which that's what they're for. And gently position the head in place. Now it's time to install the head studs. The first thing, you want to open up the packet of grease, and we're gonna install the washers onto the head first. So what you want to do, you want to put lubricant on both sides of the washer. Then I'm gonna use a screwdriver to guide the washer through, and we're gonna drop it into each bolt. So pretty much using this, I got the washer here. Then I'm gonna use this to guide the washer through. And then we have our washer down there in place, and then it just fall onto the side or nothing. Then for the studs, you grab a little bit of assembly lubricant, apply it on the tip of the stud. Then you thread in the nut a few threads. Then what it's gonna do is gonna drag the grease through all the threads, and it's also gonna have residual grease on the bottom of the nut. That way it's able to lubricate between the nut and the washer. Now we can drop in the studs. This is like pretty much the best process to do this, the easiest step. Make sure you don't get stuck, because if you don't put the washer on first and try to put it on with the stud and nut, obviously it's not gonna go on. If you put the washer on before you put it on the block, then you have the problem of maybe the washer just flying around or sliding around the head and then gets lost. Alright, we got this one more. We're in. So the size for these studs is 3/16. Then you're gonna drive them all the way in. This greatly speeds up the process than doing it by hand. We can tighten the nuts on the studs, so those gonna be 14mm 12 points. Now we can begin the torquing sequence. I'm gonna start with 30 foot-pounds to seat the head, and then we're gonna do 60 and then 80. The last step to 80 foot-pounds. Now the head is fully torqued, and now we can move on to installing the cam followers and then the camshaft, so then we can check the valve lash. I got all the lifter buckets right here, and then I'm doing the math, trying to calculate what's the thickness of the stock buckets. I'm now taking the cam followers and then I'm measuring them with a micrometer so I can see what the thickness of the stock buckets are, and then I will install the cams on the engine and then measure the valve lash clearance and then go from there. This follower has a thickness of 0.210 of an inch. So I'm writing that down. So far this is what I have. I have exhaust 210, 210, 209, 212, 213, 210. So once I finish those, I'll do the same thing on the intake, then install them on the motor, put the cam, and then with the feeler gauge I'll measure the lash. So the lifters are in, so now we gotta open up the BC cams. So a couple of you guys already know, but I'm running the 2JC VVTi Stage 3 cams. These are 272 durations. These are the nice ones. Then here are the valve clearance numbers we're looking for. So we're looking for 0.008 or 0.10 on the exhaust. So let's see if we can get close to this. If not, we need new buckets. We have the camshaft out of the box, and now we just have another box to open. You can see the cam. Here we go. So this one is the intake side. So here we have the 272 intake camshaft. Let's go ahead and drop this thing in. There we go. Now to the exhaust camshaft. And now we drop in the exhaust camshaft. I just need some cam caps and then we can measure our clearance. I did not put any lubricant right now since all I want to do is just measure the valve clearance. The lubricant will kind of make that harder, kind of get it in the way. So I'm going to do those in dry. I'm going to put a little bit of Permatex Ultra Slick engine assembly lube on the journals so it spins smoothly. Let's pretty much put a drop on each one. That should at least help spin the cam easier. Make sure I don't scratch anything. A little bit here, a little bit there. You get a drop, you get a drop, you get a drop. I did my intake valve adjustment and these are the specs that I got. So I got 0.12 on the first one, 0.11, 0.10, 0.11. The only one that's within spec has to be valve number 8. That one's 0.08, and so that's what we're looking for. So to check valve lash, I kind of make it easy and start with the 0.10 and then go either smaller or higher from there, since 0.10 seems to be the average. So on these valves, for example, are the ones that the lobe is facing up, so then you have clearance on the other side. That's how you measure them. So each valve you're gonna measure, you have to rotate the cam so the lobe is pointing away from the valve, and then you can measure the free floating clearance on the other side. So if I grab the 0.10 feeler gauge, I can put it between the lobe and the lifter, no problem. But if I try on the other side, it won't go in. So that means I know this one, it's either 10 or bigger, and this one is smaller than 10. So now I grab the 0.11 and I'm gonna try on this side again, and it doesn't go in, so that means it's 0.10. Now on the other side I'm gonna go 0.09 and let's try it. It doesn't go in. Now we try 0.08 and it goes right in. So this valve is 0.08. Little bad side about working late nights. I made a little mistake with my numbers. So here was adding everything up and I was like, this is making no sense. And then I go back to the chart. I had the buckets laid out in the exhaust on this side, intake on that side, and then the head is the other way around. So I have intake size readings on the exhaust side and exhaust side readings on the intake side. And then that's why my numbers were not adding up over here. So I'm gonna have to redo this list again. So what I did, I have bucket size, the lash, the correction needed, and then the final size bucket that I need. And that's where I figure out that my size needed on the intake were like a lot smaller than the size needed on the exhaust. Like, wait a minute, this makes no sense. So I'm gonna fix this up when I get home now, and then we'll do the list again. After spending a couple hours trying to figure out how to simplify this system as simple as possible, it's gonna allow you to determine the valve lash on the 2JC engine the simplest way as possible. I was gonna hold off showing you guys this later, but yes, I got some GTE valve covers. I'm gonna have to send this out to get powder coated to make them nice. They're pretty rough right now, but they're gonna look super sweet. Before I cut back to the chase, one very important highlight here is that the GTE valve covers, for some reason on the VVTi engines, this doesn't line up. I noticed that the GE head has this here and has another one right here, so you can put either GTE or GE. Every other mounting spot lines up minus this one, so I'm gonna have to cut this and weld it on this side over here so it lines up, and like kind of like redo the hole so I can bolt down the valve cover properly. So let's go ahead and take these guys off somehow with one hand. Almost impossible. Previously on the video, I showed you how to rotate the cam and get it ready so you can check the valve lash properly. Now I need to explain to you what's the process after you get those measurements, what to do after. I'm gonna put this on the screen, but I determined that by making a formula first, so I have obviously the information to JC Camshaft followers, specs for Alberto BIGBOOST. Then we're gonna be using SuperTech buckets that you can install a shim between 1.35 millimeter to 3.5 millimeters. The bucket itself has a thickness of 3.28 millimeters. Then you add a shim between 135 to 350 to get the right lash. Now, based on the information from BC, the intake lash should be 0.008 and the exhaust lash should be 0.010. That I showed you guys also how to read that on the lash adjustment or the lash tool. Then I made over here a table 1 through 12. You have 12 valves on each side, so you have intake and exhaust. Then I measure with the micrometer that my bucket on number 1 is 213, so that's 0.213 of an inch, right? And then I have a valve lash of 0.006, so now it needs to be 008, so I mean 0.06 is too small. So I need to make a correction of adding 0.002 of a gap. That means I gotta make the bucket 0.002 thinner than the current bucket that's on there, and then that's where I get my measurement of 2.211. Then I also have to convert that to metric, since the SuperTech buckets have the measurements in metric. I'm gonna be converting that, so 0.211 equals 5.35 millimeters. So now I have 5.35 millimeters, and then I deduct the SuperTech bucket thickness of 3.28, so that means I'm gonna need a shim of 2.07 millimeters. And that's where I get the formula of what shims I'm going to be using on the head, and I repeat that with all the cylinders. Now we can move on to the rest of the engine. So you can see that something very odd is that this sprocket does not belong here. This is an intake, this is an exhaust sprocket on the intake side. I just put that on there so it'll be easier to rotate the cam with a 70mm wrench than trying to spin it through this. And I also didn't want to put the BBTI one with an Allen bolt because it was a little harder to rotate that way. I think that's a lot of solid content for this video, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this video out now, and then I'm gonna record another cool video installing the rest of the accessories and the motor, starting by the oil pump, because I finally got a nice OEM oil pump. I'm gonna speak a little bit about oil pump differences, so you can know a little bit more knowledge about what suits your engine best. Alright guys, well, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more awesome content. This 2JC is gonna be a really solid engine, so I'm trying to provide a lot of really useful information for you guys. So stay tuned, make sure to hit that notification bell every time I put a video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.